welcome to the secret to how I survived, and that is Amazon Japan. With buying stuff in Japan, it's really hard to find the stuff I need, especially in stores around here, so I buy almost everything on Amazon Japan. So what's in the box today? Let's go ahead and take a look. Seems that we have some fiberglass cloth. This is some thick quality glass. It's about 5 meters, I think. That's 15 feet, about 15 feet for you feet speakers. So yeah, this is what I'm going to use for the bottom of my boat. I bought everything almost from Japan, Amazon Japan, like I said. Surprisingly enough, even in the anchor as well. Woo, yeah. I'll be using this as well. This is about a 10-pound anchor. Not in heavy seas, but I want to be able to hold. So yeah, I bought that from Amazon as well. I also got some specialty items. A paddle as well. This is a really simple paddle. Kind of like an emergency paddle. I only want to use it for when I need to. I don't want to use it like all the time. Some rope, cleats. These are cleats that you put on rope, and this is, I think, like it's a type of ABS plastic, so it's not really high quality, but the ropes on this boat aren't really going to exceed so much load, as much load as this can bear. So this is only, I think, $3 for 2. So we'll see how well it lasts. But yeah, the only problem is with Amazon is it's hard to find like chemical stuff, like for example glues, epoxies, just because the shipping's difficult. Package number 2. From Amazon again, always. This time. Now this is something that you can get in the store, but just for simplicity I decided to get it on Amazon. It's a little cheaper. Rope, specifically anchor. People recommend getting a chain to link through your boat. So the chain will serve as a purpose of like keeping the tension on the anchor instead of the rope itself. The cool thing about metal is it bends. So this is 50 meters, so 150 feet. Smells like rope. Good morning. Today I want to give you guys an update on the boat project. And if you haven't watched my last video, the last video will be linked in the description below the video. So I highly recommend going and watching that video first, because today I'm going to give an update on from the previous video. So please check that out. So what I wanted to do today is give you guys kind of a walk around of the inside of my boat. And I also want to kind of share a little bit of the details behind the project and things I've encountered through this build and things I've learned, and also why I'm building a boat in more detail. When I was thinking about this project, it started about a year ago when I was thinking about what to do, and I wanted to do a project similar to this scale, but I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So I thought about building cabinets and desks or tables and whatnot, and then I decided, why not build a boat? So I started watching YouTube videos on boat building, and I came across so many YouTube videos about boat building, and this is kind of what this video is. It's for people who really are interested in boat building. So if you're that person, I really hope this video helps encourage you and inspire you. And also too, if you're just a person who's interested in boat building and you've built boats, I would love to hear feedback and comments and whatnot on the project. So anyway, so the boat I'm building that you see here filled with stuff is called Blondie. Originally designed by John Bell, and John Bell has project plans online in PDF format, so I just downloaded the plans, and this is for it's an 8.5 foot dinghy roughly, and The dinghy itself is designed to be rowed, sailed, and well, I don't know if it's designed to be motored, but it's designed to serve a bigger boat it's called a yacht tender. So it's boats that you have on bigger boats that you use to go between shore and your mooring, which is out in the deeper water for your big boat. But for me, I don't have a big boat, so I'm just building a small dinghy by itself, and I want to sail it and I want to row it. I live in Japan, in a city called Himeji. And so my wife, she's actually from an island off of Himeji, beautiful island, and it's only about 40-minute boat ride. But once you get out there, it's a really small community and full of fishermen and interesting places to see. And so I really want to go out there and explore the island. And the water it's not so turbulent, if you will, so it could definitely be sailed by a small boat. If you're considering building a boat, I highly recommend doing stitch and glue. Stitch and glue means using stitching, which is either wires right here, like baling wire, but in my case, I opted for using zip ties. And the hardest part about building boats is finding a design. I spent months looking for a design, and one of the most popular dinghies out there is called the Mirror Dinghy, and it's a fantastic dinghy. It was designed in the 50s in the UK, and it became a hugely popular boat because it was so easy to build. But for me personally, I don't like the dinghy design of the Mirror because the front bow end is flat. I really wanted a pointed bow, and so the Blondie dinghy for me is a perfect balance of design and functionality. Also too as well, the draft, the line from the water to the top of the boat is a lot bigger, so it gives more room for error, if you will, at least in my mind. So anyway, stitch and glue is so easy once you have the plans, because once you have the plans, all you got to do is literally follow the measurements and cut the panels out, and it's all explained here. You know, don't let me explain it to you. Go look at the plans. It tells you everything. My biggest challenge for me is that this is done in feet and inches, and so where I live, there's actually no measuring tapes in feet and inches. I could buy one on Amazon, but all the panels and lumber here is in millimeters and centimeters, and so I wanted to just adapt the hard way, if you will, I guess, at the beginning to make it easier for me later on. So I actually converted everything into centimeters right here. And to be honest, some of the measurements probably weren't 100% correct, but it's okay. Stitch and glue is very forgiving in its design. Stitch and glue is literally just like taking two boards and you just drill a hole between the two of them, and then, don't worry, this is scrap. And then you just take a zip tie, right? And so you have it on the edge, close to the edge, and you just stick a zip tie through, and then you just zip it, tie it together, and then you fold it open, and voila, you have a joint that can be epoxied and whatnot. Obviously, before I built the boat, I scaled it down and I built a model of the boat out of paper, and I went ahead and painted and taped it just because I was curious. And so I wanted to test the design and see if it worked, and it did. So always start here. Always build a model. Always, always. Secondly, is the hardest thing about building a boat is being too optimistic as far as pricing is concerned. I tried my best to save money, but with a boat this size, you're going to spend probably $500 at the minimum. And that's if you want a boat that's going to last a while. If you want it to last a year or so, you can really cut costs on epoxy and fiberglass, but I don't recommend it. At first, I was like, no way, I wanted to just build a boat at the cheapest level possible, and so I decided that I was going to use this 10-minute epoxy that you can buy at the dollar store, and then I would take a cup of water and I would boil the water and stick the epoxy in the cup of water to make it more viscous, I guess, more like liquid-like. So then I would pour it over and stuff, and it worked for a lot of things, like joints, and actually right now the boat's held together in that way, but it's expensive. It's very expensive. When you look at the epoxies that designed for marine epoxy, it's like 2 gallons worth that you're going to need for this boat. And when I first looked at the price, 2 gallons was about $150. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. The boat's going to cost so much money. And realistically, the most expensive part about boat building is fiberglass and epoxy. And that's something that you just got to deal with. So what I did is I saved up my money over a long time. So about a year ago, I started saving money. I don't have a lot of money. I work a day job just like everyone else does. And so every month I saved about $100 here and there. And so over 6 months, I had saved up enough money to kind of begin the project. And I've been working on this boat since November. So I've been slowly continuing the project. But realistically, if you had the money, if you had all the tools, then you can get it done probably in a month, I reckon. But I live in an apartment, and so I've been doing a lot of my cuts by hand just because I don't want to be noisy and I don't want to damage the apartment I'm in. So I have a tarp down, I've just taken my time, and my wife has been very forgiving through this project. So thank you very much for helping support me, wife. I really appreciate it. So without further ado, let's take you around the boat. Okay, so with building the boat, I watched a lot of YouTube videos, and one of the most encouraging things was a comment I heard from a boat building school that goes like,
boat building isn't rocket science. It's a series of steps. And the steps are quite simple. The problem is that there's a million steps.
And I agree. Building a boat is a lot of steps in a particular order, but once you do them in the order and correctly, you have a boat that looks good and functions beautifully. Now, inside my boat, it looks a lot different than the original designer's vision, and that's why you build boats. You want to make it the way you want. And inside here, it's your space to decide what to do. The original designer, John Bell, he liked an open layout, so he only had a dagger board box and a front brace here. Mine's really rough right now, but so his dagger board box was actually offset, so he had it over here. And so on my dagger board, I want it centered just because I like symmetry, even though my boat is not very symmetrical at all. And also as well, I'm really tall. I'm actually 6'6", that's 198 centimeters, and so this boat is only about 8.5 feet long. At the bow, it's a little bit longer, but realistically, functionality space doesn't really start until right here. So what I did is I decided to make this the seating area for when I'm sailing. I'll be sitting down here, and actually I fit pretty comfortably. I'll have a center seat here for storage. I'll have a front seat here for storage, and I'll have a back seat as well for seating and storage. And flotation is very important, so I used styrofoam and wrapped in like cellophane. And 1 cubic foot of cellophane will give you about 50 pounds of flotation. So in my boat, I plan to have at least 3 cubic feet of flotation. In here, I had a brace, this side, a piece of 2x4 that I cut down. I don't recommend it, but I had to because when I jointed my boat together, I didn't joint it correctly. And I knew it was wrong. When you joint the pieces of wood together, as you see, I'll show you in the plans, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 feet long. Now, for me, my lumber was only 6 feet long. So what I had to do is I had to put 2 pieces of 6 foot long lumber next to each other, and then I had to stitch the pieces of plywood together. So in this boat, it's right here for the bottom part, and then it's right here for the side parts. And so that translates to, you can see right here, here for this top part, and then here for this top part, and then down here for this part. This was no problem. That was easy to deal with. But here, when I started stitching this front part together with the zip ties, you can see the holes here. Zip tie, zip tie, zip tie. Then I epoxied the seam. That's nice and strong. And the bottom part, no problem. And I use a little bit of hot glue just to hold it in place. That'll be sanded off later, so don't worry. But here, this bottom part got tugged down a lot when I zip tied it. It was incredible, the amount of force. That's no good. So anyway, I use zip ties, and zip ties will break before the plywood does, so it's safer. But even with the force, it still started to pull this down, and it separated at the seam. So what I did is I had to brace on this side, both sides the same. So yay for symmetry. And it worked. So I glued it in place. I used Titebond glue for most of the glue on this project. Titebond 3 is not designed for below the waterline, so I recommend using it above the waterline. So I used it here to glue it in, and I screwed it down here. And on this side, there is a piece of plywood attached to that. So no problem, but there's still some residual pieces of metal in there that aren't going nowhere. But that was a big issue. So inside the seam, it's not set right now with anything permanent, but I have some epoxy putty just to hold it in place for now. And I actually used some wooden dowels through the bottom of the boat to connect the panels together, just to give it some extra strength, because I was a little worried. And also here as well, there's more dowels, and which were originally screws, and I screwed tons of screws into here, and with the intention of pulling them out and putting dowels in there. So I don't recommend leaving screws in there because metal rusts. And anyway, this will be covered in epoxy and fiberglass. So I'll have the mast here. I also have a jib sheet, which is over here in this pile of stuff. The jib sheet will be attached here. I'm thinking about putting a boom, a little tiny boom out front to attach the jib and then to the mast. And so the mast is over there waiting to be beat into shape. This panel right here will be the seats. So right now I'm waiting on some epoxy from America to come. Most of the stuff I buy is from Amazon, either Amazon JP or Amazon US. You'd be amazed what you can get. But when I was home in the States for Christmas, I actually picked up some Flex Seal. And this by itself is not designed to be used for a sealant, but I plan to use it over the epoxy just to kind of protect the epoxy from UV rays and whatnot. And also it's a rubber coating, so it'll just give me the extra protection. So this boat is designed to be about 50 pounds with the open design of John Bell, but realistically for me, I want it to be heavier. I want it to be about 100 pounds because I plan to use a small motor in the back. And the heavier it is, the more stable it is in the water. I'm pretty heavy. I'm 6'6", so I'm about 215 pounds. So yeah, with my wife and I, we can sail comfortably, but wouldn't recommend more than that. Also too as well, building a boat, nothing will be perfect. Look, there's a giant gap right there that I had to epoxy. And also as well, there's some gaps down there and whatnot. But the thing about building the boat is sanding is key. And if you make a mistake, chances are you can sand it out. Or if you have a mistake like here, just put some fiberglass tape and then you can epoxy it later on. So I'll be using two kinds of fiberglass. I'll be using this 5-ounce tape cloth in the seams. And then on the bottom, I'll be using I think it's a 7-ounce or 8-ounce cloth on the bottom to make it strong. But yeah, anyway, that's the kind of the rundown for now. If you guys have any questions, let me know. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I encountered. I can't think of anything else on the top of my head right now. But the thing is, though, if you're thinking about building a boat, I encourage you guys. It's a lot easier than you think it is, and it's a lot more complicated than you think it is at the same time. Just plan ahead. Make sure you understand how much it's going to cost you. Make sure you understand how much the task is going to take of your time and of your space. And if you count the cost and you think it's a good idea, then I recommend it. I've enjoyed it thoroughly. I've been using this project as a kind of a weekend, midweek project to take my time up, and man, it's been fantastic. I can't wait to get it in the water and sail it for the first time. It's going to be a great boat, I feel. So anyway, thanks for watching, guys. I hope this answers some of your questions, and I look forward to giving you an update in the future. Thanks, guys. See you next time.